Good morning. We're happy to be with you today for ISME. My name is Elaine Bernstorff, and I am Professor of Music Education at Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas. My co-worker is Megan Wald, who is a graduate student at Wichita State, who is originally from New Jersey. She'll be telling you more about herself as we go through our program. One of the things we're going to do today is hit briefly these topics, autism and the family, looking at the effect of sibling responses throughout childhood for a diagnosis, identifying and supporting siblings, looking at advocacy in the community, and a special poem that Megan's going to share with us. So I'm going to just briefly start, and then I'm going to let Megan take a lot of the rest of this. When we think about an autism diagnosis in a family, there are many different reactions. And one of those is the sense of loss that we may have for what would be the envisioned normal child, and perhaps some dreams for what the family might look like and what the activities might be. The Kubler-Ross grief cycle is one that is often used for looking at this sense of loss. And I'm going to talk about, let Megan talk about this just a little bit from her point of view.
Yep. So the family is going to react differently amongst the different members. They may feel shocked, or they may be in denial, or they might feel relief from finally getting a diagnosis for their child. And this grief cycle is continuous. And even years down the line after diagnosis, parents and siblings might still be experiencing those feelings, and they can be triggered by many different things. And this process is not linear. They might be in multiple places of this grief cycle at any given time, and it's never really going to go away.
One of the things that we have noticed is that sometimes music teachers, we have students who have siblings who have disabilities. Sometimes we are privy to that information. Sometimes we do not know that information. However, we may see some of these responses of behavior for siblings. Some of them have different roles that they may take in a family. And Megan's going to talk to us a little bit about her own experiences as we do this. But one of the things that we need to understand is that when we see certain behaviors by students in the classroom, getting to know more about the family and potential siblings and their disabilities or different issues they may have could be something that would be important for us to know about. Oh, go ahead, Megan. Sorry.
That's okay. Yes, so basically, these responses are going to be defined by their relationship and with their sibling and their status in the family. So those things can be things like birth order, their age difference, if they're twins, if the sibling with a disability has communication abilities, especially verbal communication, that can be vastly different for someone who is nonverbal. And then their parent relationships. And also to note, these siblings will experience the grief cycle independently from their parents. And that will be just different with time. A lot of the time that is just because they don't recognize their sibling as different until somebody else points it out. So that grief cycle might not start until they're much older.
One of the things that's really can be happening in the family is that, especially if the oldest child does not have the disability and a younger child does, but it can happen either way, is that the sibling may take on a parental role. And I'm going to let Megan talk a little bit more about this from her own personal experience.
Yeah, so this picture here kind of gives a good insight into what it might look like. I'm currently trying to keep my brother in the frame of the picture for my parents to get a nice picture of all of of my siblings and I. Um, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a parentified sibling in all areas, in all aspects, but definitely this picture gives a good idea of what it might look like. This sibling is definitely someone who is going to be uh, seeking out leadership roles to fill that parent role elsewhere. Think of a student who might want to become drum major or the class president, someone who can impart that parent role elsewhere. These students might not be able to separate that self-worth, though, their own self-worth, from those leadership positions. So you might need to act as a role for that student, role model for that student, to say, hey, you don't need to be the parent in every situation. You can be just a member of our group for this moment.
The other thing that can happen is that a child may be an underachiever, and this can happen for numerous reasons. One could be that there's just enough going on in the household that the child cannot get their homework done or has a lot of disruptions. In our music settings, it may be that they aren't really allowed to practice very much because it's considered disruptive to the child with a disability. This could be especially true in the situation with autism if there are sensory issues. And some of the time, it can also be a little bit of a rebellion type of situation where a student feels like that they're not getting enough attention or they are frustrated by the situation. And so it could be attention getting behavior, although in my personal experience, this is seldom the case. It's more the fact that there is enough going on in the household that this child doesn't get a chance to perhaps have the attention that they need if they run into difficulty, and they do not want to ask for extra help when the family is already stressed. Megan, do you have anything to add here?
I actually don't. I think you said it well.
Thank you. I am going to let her take the lead on this one.
Okay. Well, the superachiever is someone who's a people pleaser. They attempt to mitigate their family's stress by being perfect all of the time. They try to get above average grades, seek leadership roles like that parentified child. Um, Basically, this in the music classroom is going to look like someone who wants to be perfectionist, who is upset by grades that are less than perfect, and maybe doesn't take criticism well. They might seek that attention of being the overachiever, the teacher's pet, the leader. um, they're probably someone who wants to be involved in every single activity you offer. They want to be in all of the honors courses, the AP courses. They want to have that 4.0. They want to be valedictorian, that kind of thing. um, but in music, we know perfection is basically impossible. So this person might have a hard time being in music where they know they can work really hard and never really be perfect. Um, Maybe that's a good thing for them to experience, or maybe it's something that's really difficult for them. And it's our job as music educators to support them and make them realize, well, make them know that perfection isn't necessary. Um, you might need to remind them of that.
Another comment I might make in this area is that as they get older, this may play into their choices for careers and majors when they go into college later. Sometimes they may, even though they have a great passion for and would love to be involved in music, they could occasionally be the student who feels like they can't go into a music career because they need to go into something where there will be monetary success so that they can be very independent, so that the family does not have additional monetary stress, and also that perhaps that they can in the future be the person who helps take care of their sibling after the parents are gone. So this is another area. The other thing that could happen with this is that they may, while they could be very much the super achiever in music, they may not feel like that they can ask for a better instrument or to be able to go to the kinds of activities that would help them to stay on that track. So they may have some conflicts in their feelings about their music involvement. Another area that can happen is that a sibling may actually have their own needs of various kinds. They may have learning disabilities. They may have some disorders on their own that may be being overlooked because of the needs of the sibling. I think Megan has looked into this a little bit and maybe has some additional comments about this.
Yep. So basically, because people with autism are more likely to have family members that also get diagnosed with autism or other learning disabilities, we should be aware of that in the music classroom, especially because we see most students in a school. You might see all of the siblings in a family, and you might be able to see that comparison happening, but also be able to notice that. Uh, and in the individual who does not have autism might have other issues that are going up, that are being overlooked at home, um, or that their parents don't know genuinely, is an issue. They might be inattentive. They might write their letters or numbers backwards. They might be below their grade level in terms of reading skills or writing skills, or they might have speech delays that are going unnoticed just because there's other things for their parents to focus on at home and they haven't brought it up with their teachers. So it might be a good idea if you see these things to bring that up with the child study team who maybe doesn't want to give those parents the stress of having another child with a disability. Um, but in the end, it's better for that child to receive the help they need.
Another area that we talk about is survivor's guilt. I think that this is an area where it can be with us when a student has a disability. It can also be as a family experiences things like miscarriages or death in the family of a child. And the other thing about survivor's guilt that's interesting, I had a young man who was very stressed and ran out of the classroom one day. I was able to then have a teacher come over and stay with the class while I found him. And he was actually being tested for gifted. And I didn't realize that was going on, but he started crying and told me that he was being tested for gifted and he didn't understand why he was being gifted when his sibling had trouble learning and why couldn't they both just be normal. And it was a moving experience for me early in my career and made me really think about the sibling role. Megan, you have more here?
Yeah, so this feeling, it's not necessarily something you're experiencing all of the time, but it can be triggered by achievements, milestones, life events of siblings rather than of the student with autism, the person with autism. It's an interesting dynamic in my own household because my brothers are identical twins. One of them has autism and the other does not. So we see these achievements, and then we immediately pretty much compare and say, oh, well, this is kind of bittersweet because while we're proud of Ryan for one thing, Eric's never going to be able to do that. Um, and that comparison is just hard to avoid. Um, a sibling participating in music might feel guilty that they get that opportunity or perhaps the capability to participate in higher level ensembles, in regional groups, in just being able to do it. um, if someone was trained and tried to get my sibling to participate in music, he might have been successful. So we'll never know that because no one ever tried. Um, and that's something that I'm going to live with probably for the rest of my life as a music educator and as a sibling of autism.
So finally, we're going to sort of move into the last part of our presentation, but we think that it's really, really important for you as music educators to get to know the whole family, if possible, to try when you have a student that you have concerns about to find out if there is something going on with a sibling, and understand the dynamics between in families and between siblings, and getting to know more. Sometimes in schools you have all the whole family, but when there's a student with a disability, a lot of times they will be in a different setting at times, especially as they get older. Megan, you have any more comments on that?
No, I think you said it well.
Go ahead.
All right. So in the music classroom, when you advocate and want to build that community, um, basically you need to recognize that belonging in the community starts within the classroom. Although we're talking about siblings of autism who may have no issue finding places where they're included, inclusiveness is key to advocacy and that community building. Embracing those with differences in the music classroom, it shows siblings that they and their family members are welcomed and belong there. And how do you do that then? You need to be an advocate for students with differing needs. Um, Other students will notice when you say something, and saying nothing speaks louder. You need to offer your classes to the special education teachers and students, and sometimes it's just a matter of communication. They might not know that they can participate in performance-based music classes. You should be aware of your student's home life and changing circumstances. You need to recognize that it's okay for a sibling to take a day off of playing to speak with a trusted adult like a guidance counselor. If you can see that they're exhausted or they might have a bruise from a temper tantrum, playing the flute one day is not the biggest deal. They can go and get that help that they need and just talk it out. Um, and know when it's time to reach out for your colleagues for extra support.
And I would add that speech pathologists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists, as well as social workers and nurses, are amongst those colleagues that I think we as music educators should really seek, not just classroom teachers and special ed teachers, because sometimes it's the extended support services that will actually help us as we have questions. So why have we focused on siblings? Well, this is something I've seen in my career as I've worked with a variety of different students, and both who have disabilities and gotten to know their siblings, and those who are, when I was teaching regular music, those who have siblings who have disabilities. And Megan has a wonderful poem that she's going to present to us shortly that really gives us the picture of how all of this works. Megan, do you have any other comments about this picture? So I'll let you end our presentation with a beautiful example of why we think this was an important topic and why we wanted to talk about it, because I haven't heard a lot of us talk about it all that much. Over the years, we do talk about it a little bit, but I think it's something that's important for us to be aware of both students with disabilities, but also of their siblings, as many of us do work in inclusive settings these days where we do see both, see a whole family of students.
Right, so this poem is titled Tears in the Key of E. I received a picture in a text from my mother of him laying in my bed, his head under my pillow, and my blanket covering his shoulders and curled over his feet, with the caption, "Someone misses you." But instead of responding to the text, I sat in my dorm on my bed and I cried. I cried as I read from my special education textbook at a line in chapter 4 that says elder sisters of children with special needs are often more stressed than other siblings, possibly because their parents rely on them for childcare. And I laughed because for me, it's absolutely true. Then I thought about what he must be doing without me around. Now, don't think of this as egotistical. The world does keep turning in the Wald house without me there. My dad is at work and my mom is working, cooking, cleaning, and doing enough laundry for an entire army. And my other siblings are out with friends or doing homework or playing video games. Three things our brother cannot do. Because he cannot speak, he cannot read or write. He doesn't understand the relationship between the TV screen and the controls in his hand, making all three of those options virtually impossible. I cried because I thought of him being alone at home, isolated in a house full of people. I don't know why I took on the role of only friend or why I have become his second mom. I don't know if it's because I'm older, like my textbook says, or if I have some subconscious guilt that somehow I caused his diagnosis. Or maybe I feel obligated to be his friend because of a feeling similar to survivor's guilt. Because I am normal and he is not, and he struggles because he cannot do simple things like ask for food. But I have the ability to stand up here in front of a class and give a speech, one that I wrote without someone giving me the first syllables of every word until I forced out each phrase. Until they decided I had said enough. Most don't understand the relationship we have. I know how to make him laugh. I know what makes him sad and angry and frustrated. I know how to help him when he had a rough day. I know everything about him. I am his best friend, and he is mine. He is my buddy, my Mr. E, my baby guy, my goofball. My Play-Doh loving, yoga class attending, competitive swimming 14-year-old little brother Eric. My best friend who has autism. Going away to school, but not knowing if he understands where I am going or why I'm going is so painful. I hope he understands that I'm going for him. And despite my crying in the key of Eric, I get up and keep going.
So we're very pleased that we've had this opportunity to talk with you today, and we will look forward to chatting with you during the question and answer time. And we hope you have a great conference. Thank you very much.